Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're kicking things off in Chengdu and taking you on an absolutely breathtaking cinematic journey right into the heart of Sichuan, China. We're going to start our trip down in the deadly, churning waters of some ancient river junctions, and eventually we'll climb our way up to the misty, deeply spiritual heights of Mount Ermei. Get ready because we're diving into a story packed with ancient engineering marvels, just unimaginable human devotion, and landscapes that quite literally bridge the earth and the sky. To really wrap your head around how this journey begins, you have to understand the sheer terror that water used to bring to this specific region. There's a chilling local proverb that goes, "The giant Buddha wants to wash its feet. Leshan cannot sleep." And that highlights a terrifying reality. Back in ancient times, the city of Leshan was sitting right at the brutal convergence of three major rivers, the Minjiang, the Qingyi, and the Dadu. When the summer floods hit, these waters just raged, totally out of control, smashing ships into the cliff walls and taking countless lives. The saying meant that if the waters ever rose high enough to reach the Buddha's feet, the entire city of Leshan was at risk of being swallowed whole. So that brings us to the core dilemma of our historical journey today. Think about it. How do you actually calm a river that swallows massive ships whole? Well, back in the 8th century, during the Tang Dynasty, there was a local Zen monk named Haitong who stood up on the mountain looking down at this chaotic water. Day in and day out, he watched these raging rivers cause fatal shipwrecks, taking the lives of everyday local fishermen and travelers. He just knew something had to be done. But human engineering at the time, it seemed completely useless against the fury of three converging rivers. So, what does Haitong do? He comes up with this incredibly bold, almost unbelievable solution. He decides he's going to construct a massive statue of Maitreya Buddha, carved directly into the solid cliff face right overlooking the rivers. Now, you might be wondering, why Maitreya? Well, in Chinese Buddhism, Maitreya is the Buddha of the future. He represents hope, light, and ultimate peace. Haitong's vision was that the sheer divine presence of this colossal Maitreya would forever calm the wind and the waves, keeping the people of Leshan safe for good. But as you can imagine, you don't just carve a literal mountain without immense resources. And the human cost of this devotion, it is just staggering. Haitong traveled everywhere to raise the money, but this massive project quickly stalled out because they just didn't have enough funds. And to make matters worse, corrupt local officials saw this growing treasury and actually tried to seize the gathered money for themselves. To protect those funds and prove his absolute, unyielding determination, legend has it that Haitong made the ultimate, truly gruesome sacrifice. He gouged out his own eyes. His fierce, terrifying level of devotion completely shocked those officials into backing down, which ultimately saved the project. Sadly, though, Haitong didn't live to see his masterpiece finished. Construction officially kicked off in 713 AD, and he spent the rest of his life overseeing just the carving of the Buddha's head before he passed away. After his death, work completely ground to a halt in the mid-8th century because they lacked both funding and leadership. Actually, it wasn't until decades later that regional commanders, eventually culminating with a guy named Wei Gao in 803 AD, managed to secure imperial funding to finally cross the finish line. We're talking about a staggering 90-year, multi-generational construction effort here. So, what was the payoff for those 90 agonizing years? 71. The final result was a breathtaking statue standing a colossal 71 meters tall, making it the world's largest stone Buddha. And remember, it was carved completely out of the living rock of the mountain face. To this very day, it stands as an absolute titan of the ancient world. Just to truly grasp the massive scale we are talking about here, let's put it into perspective. The head alone is nearly 15 meters high. The shoulders are 24 meters wide across. If you were to walk all the way down to the very base of the statue, you'd see that the Buddha's instep, the top of the foot, is 8.5 meters wide. You could easily fit over 100 people just casually sitting around on the Buddha's feet. It is a scale that honestly defies comprehension until you're standing right there looking up at it. So the million-dollar question, did it work? Did this giant Buddha actually calm the rivers? Well, here is where science beautifully meets faith. The project actually did calm those turbulent waters, but it wasn't just through divine intervention. Think about it for a second. Carving a 71-meter statue out of a mountain means you have to remove a massive, massive amount of stone. Over those 90 years of construction, thousands of tons of excavated rock were dumped directly into the river below.
That sheer volume of displaced rock physically altered the riverbed and changed the currents, effectively taming the wild waters exactly like Haitong had dreamed. But surviving for over 1,000 years in a super wet, flood-prone climate, that wasn't just good luck. The statue actually features an incredibly ingenious, built-in drainage and ventilation system. It acts like a hidden shield against erosion. They carved dedicated drainage ditches right into the 4th, 9th, and 18th structural layers. There are even hidden channels cleverly disguised within the folds of the Buddha's stone clothing to direct rainwater harmlessly away. And get this, there are ventilation caves carved directly behind the Buddha's ears and shoulders to stop moisture from building up inside. It is, without a doubt, an absolute masterclass in ancient engineering. Now, if you stand at the very top of the giant Buddha and look out, you might find yourself wondering, what exactly is he looking at? Well, for over a millennium, the Leshan Giant Buddha has been gazing directly across the mist, straight over the rivers, toward another deeply sacred site. He's looking right at Mount Ermei. And Mount Ermei isn't just a stunning natural wonder, it is a total heavyweight of history. It's universally revered as the site of the very first Buddhist temple ever built in China, dating all the way back to the 1st century. In Buddhist tradition, Mount Ermei is the designated spiritual domain of the Puxian Bodhisattva. That's the bodhisattva of action, known far and wide for teaching and dedicated practice. Leaving the heavy, massive stone engineering of Leshan behind, ascending Mount Ermei suddenly gives way to this highly organic, almost otherworldly landscape. Just picture the journey. You're hiking up through dense, mist-covered bamboo forests. Along the way, you discover these stunning cliff tombs from the 2nd and 3rd century Han Dynasty. Fun fact, one of those tombs actually holds the oldest known depiction of Buddha in all of China. You pass by ancient, incense-filled sanctuaries, like the Baogul Temple down at the mountain's base. And, of course, you're definitely going to run into the mountain's most famous residents, the wild, highly interactive macaque monkeys that just roam freely along the ancient pilgrimage paths. The climb up is definitely long and arduous, but it finally peaks at what is known as the Golden Summit, or Jinding. Now, this isn't just your standard mountain peak. It is a breathtaking ethereal plateau that literally rises above a vast swirling sea of clouds. When you finally reach this point, the mists part, and you are greeted by an absolute visual marvel. You are standing at an elevation of 3,077 meters above sea level. Just let that number sink in for a second. At 3,077 meters, the air is thin, the light is blindingly pure, and the summit brings you into this quiet, ethereal space that completely separates you from the turbulent, stormy world below. The raging rivers of Leshan down in the valley, they feel like they're a lifetime away. And crowning this incredible summit, perfectly capturing the harmony of wild nature and ancient architectural devotion, is a gleaming 48-meter-tall multi-directional statue of the Puxian Bodhisattva. It's cast entirely in copper and plated in gold, so it shines brilliantly against the high-altitude sun. It acts as this powerful beacon for pilgrims who have made the tough journey up the mountain. Honestly, it's a stunning spiritual bookend to the stone giant sitting down in the river valley far below. Which brings us to the end of our explainer, and leaves us with one final lingering thought to chew on. From a blind monk fundamentally altering deadly river currents with a 71-meter stone carving to golden sanctuaries floating thousands of meters above the clouds, how does humanity's devotion possess the power to literally and spiritually reshape the very earth we stand on? It's a pretty wild testament to the unimaginable things we can build when purpose, faith, and willpower align. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey.